Want to teach you how to cut a wrap skirt. And to cut this long wrap skirt, you need at least 5 years of Ankara, but I'm going to fold 4 years first. So I'm using the back side as always to start cutting my skirt. So after folding twice, I'm also going to fold triangularly like you see me do in the video. And you'll notice that some part of the fabric is really not sufficient. It's falling short. You don't want to worry about that. I'm going to show you in the course of the video how to add fabric and make it the right length. But first and foremost, we need to start cutting our skirt. And to start cutting, we need to start measuring from the pointed part of the fold. So from the pointed part, I'm going to measure 15 inches. And if it's a bigger person from size 18, you could go to as much as 16 inches. But for this size, that is going to cater for from size 8 to 18. I'm going to use 15 inches. And when I measure and check the width, it's about 12 inches. And if you multiply that by 4, you get 48 inches wide waist, which is enough to make the wrap. So now I'm going to get the length of my skirt. So from the part where we cut out the top to get the waist, we're going to start measuring. I want the skirt to be really long and flowy, so it depends on what you want. So I want the skirt to be 45 inches long. So that's what I'm doing. I'm taking 45 inches, and I'm not worried about adding extra seam allowance because I'm going to add a band. So the band will take care of that. So it's going to be long enough. If you want to cut a shorter skirt, you really don't need to use this much fabric. Then 3 yards will be okay. But because it's a long skirt, I need to use up more fabric. So now I'm going to cut out the panel. It's just the fold. So now I'm going to get the remainder of the fabric, because when I want to cut my wrap skirt, I'll just dedicate the 6 yards to it, and whatever is left could be used to make a band. So now the remainder of the fabric, you just bring it, you fold it into two, and you make sure that the two folded parts are lined, and you go to the sewing machine and you just join. So that's what I'm going to do. So you see that. So if you want, you can remove the edges, the white edges, so that they don't show in your skirt. So I will go to the sewing machine and I'm going to join that part of the fabric to the skirt to add up the length of the skirt. And not to worry, when you join the skirt, it doesn't really, it's not really obvious. It still comes out looking very nice. But if you're not using Ankara fabric, if you are using a larger width fabric, you may not need to do this. But for Ankara, because it comes in shorter length, I need to do this because it comes in 45 inches length. But if it was 60 inches, you may not need to join. Or if you don't want it this full, you may not need to join. And if it's a short skirt too, you don't need to do that. So now I've done that, and I'm going to replace the fabric following the same pattern of fold, and I'm just going to cut off the excess fabric. So you don't need to measure again because you've done that. You just use the other part that was long enough to cut. So you see it's that easy, and it's been done. So you see where you have the fold. Now we need to cut the band for the skirt. And I'm going to be cutting 3-inch band. So I folded my fabric into 4. Then I'm going to cut like 3 pieces of this because I want my band to be really long. So if you don't want your belt to go really round the skirt, you could use just 2 of this. That's a yard. I folded a yard into 4. So I'm going to get out this 3 inches bands out. But for me, I'm going to use 3 of them. You could decide to use 2, but I want it to really wrap around and form a nice bow, so I'm using 3 of it. So you could make your band smaller. It depends on what you're comfortable with. So I always like precision when I cut, and that's why I use my tape to measure all along. So we're going to join the three bands together. So you need to join them together. And now for the skirt, you need to notch. I'm going to notch the center of the skirt and also notch the center of the belt. It's important to do this so that when you're going to start sewing, you start sewing from the middle of the belt, so that you have equal amount of fabric at the both ends of the skirt. Remember, we had to cut 48 inches wide waist so that it will be long enough to do the wrap. So I'm just doing this to show you how to be precise when it comes to your sewing. So you just notch by finding the middle and using your scissors to just cut out a very tiny part of it. So before I'll start adding the belt, I need to fold the sides. I measured the belt against the skirt, and the excess part that is left I'm going to fold. So that's what I want to do with the belt now. I'm going to sew it, close it up, and I'm going to stop at the point where I checked against my skirt that the belt was going to start from. So you don't sew all the way, you just sew and stop there. You go to the other side of the belt and you also sew and stop where you notched it earlier, where the band is, the belt is going to start from, where the skirt width ends. And while sewing, remember, you don't need to leave more than ½ inch seam allowance. So I'm just going to tighten the stitch at that point. Now I'm going to go to the other side and do the same. It's a really long belt, so because that's the way I like it. But like I said earlier, you can really sew it the way you want. You can make it as long or as short as you want, and that's one thing I love about sewing. It's subjective, it's relative, it depends on what you want. You can play around it or play with it. Sometimes if you're new to sewing, you could actually iron out the belt, put it on the table, fold it into 2, iron, so that your sewing will be easier. So always tighten the stitch at the end of your sewing. Now I've turned the belt and I've gone to iron it too. So if you iron it, it flattens it out, and also you're going to fold the part that you didn't sew with your iron ½ inch. That way it's easy for you to sew the band of the skirt. So that's what I did. It makes it easier this way. So now I'm going to get my skirt, and before I add the belt, it's important that we fold the sides of the skirt. So you're going to fold both sides of the skirt so that once you add the band, you are good to go. So I post a new video every Sunday. You don't want to miss any of my videos. And in order not to miss my videos, you need to subscribe. After subscribing, you want to turn on your notification bell. That way, anytime I post a video, you're going to be notified and you could watch my videos as they drop. If you like the video also, you can give a thumbs up. Feel free to share to your friends and to leave a comment. So you notice that as I'm folding the skirt, I'm just using about ½ an inch allowance. It's not a very big fold, just a small, not too tiny, like you'll do normally when you fold the bottom of your skirt. One thing I always tell my students is that sewing is as easy as driving a car. Initially, when you start driving a car, it seems really tedious, but as you go on, you notice it becomes easier. So the more you sew, the more perfect you become. So I've done one side of the skirt. I'm going to do the other side as well. Then I'm going to get the band. You remember I notched somewhere earlier, so I'm going to put that against the part I also notched in the skirt, and I'll start sewing. So I'll sew to the left, then I'll sew to the right. So you can use a pin to hold it down. You could decide to use a pin to hold it down all along, all the way to the point where the belt starts from. If that would make it easier for you, then why not? Go ahead and do so. So now I'm going to start sewing. You remember that earlier I used my iron to fold ½ inch on the band, so that when I start sewing, that is going to guide me and it will be easy to sew the band on. So I opened it up. I'm using one side of the band first. I'll sew that all along the width of the skirt. Then once I'm through with the first stitch, I'll now flip the band over on top of the first stitch and sew on top, and that way the sewing is invisible. Everything is tucked inside, so you don't need a serger machine to actually finish up the edges. It allows for clean finishing, and your work is impeccable. It's always important to have that at the back of your mind. Although some people could decide to just sew the band just the way it is and put it, but it's okay even if you do that. But for a better finishing, you sew this way: one part of the band first, then the second part. And when you're sewing, you don't need to be in a rush. Always take your time to sew. And like I said earlier on, you could actually use a plain fabric to replicate this style. It doesn't have to be Ankara print. It could be cotton, it could be crepe or chiffon. And when you use those fabrics, you'll discover you don't need to add fabric. You don't need to do the joining I did earlier because they come in bigger length, but Ankara fabric comes in shorter lengths, hence the need for the joining we did earlier. But if it's a short skirt, it's the same principle, but you will not need to add any fabric. You will not need to join. So if you can make a long wrap skirt, you can also make a short one. All you need to change is the length. Yeah, so I've done the first part. Now I'm going to flip over like you see and just stitch on top. This part can be really tricky, so for a first timer you want to use your pins to start sewing, but it's important you iron on like I did earlier. When you iron when you fold the 1/2 inch in, it guides you and helps you to be precise. You just go, you take it slow, easy. You don't need to rush your sewing, because if you rush it, you're going to make errors. One reason I love wrap skirts is because you can wear them all season long, whether it's summer, it's winter, you can wear them. During summer, you could use a tank top or a tube top or just a t-shirt. And in winter, you could use a high neck woolly top that keeps you really warm. You could wear it with a jacket. It's really versatile. So I believe for every lady, sewing a wrap skirt is a project that is worthwhile, that you really want to learn. And once you've done it once, it's really easy to do, and you will not want to stop sewing. Some people put stay on their band, so you can try to use stay also to make your band firmer. So now I'm done with the band. I need to fold the bottom of my skirt, and once I'm done with that, it's a wrap. The skirt is ready. So when you fold also the bottom of your flare, you just want to fold systematically. It can be tricky as well, but you fold along as you go, and sometimes you need to pull. You just pull slightly and make sure that your folding at the bottom of the flare is not too big. If it is too big, too wide, then you're going to miss it. It's going to give you a lot of issues. So just fold 1/2 inch, not too tiny, not too big, because it's Ankara. But if it's chiffon or crepe, you can really do tiny folding. Or if you have problems in folding this way, you can use the serger machine and just or your overlocking machine. Then you weave the edges before you now fold. That makes it easier as well. But when you don't have one, if you don't have a serger, then you need to do this. You need to fold the way I am folding. So thank you for watching my video, and I hope to see you next time when I post a new video. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on your notification buttons.